trade season in the NBA is about to intensify, and that is because December 15th is one of the biggest days on the NBA trade calendar. Gil McGregor here with Stephen Prejean-Garner. And if you're curious why December 15th is so important, that's because players who sign contracts in the offseason are officially eligible to be traded, and that is big news for the Phoenix Suns, who have been mentioned with a lot of players. I was looking at that list of players, and a few stood out to me. So, Stephen, I'm going to throw a couple of those names out to you, and curious to your thoughts about these guys. Chris Boucher, Day'Ron Sharpe, Jericho Sims, Marvin Bagley III, Brook Lopez, and Kevon Looney. When you hear those names, does anything stand out to you, or are there any names that stood out to you when you look at the December 15 names?
Yeah, I think it's Boucher of the names you gave, Boucher, Lopez, and who's the very last name that you
Kevon
mentioned?
Looney?
Yes, Boucher, Lopez, and Looney for me. Guys that have some experience. The latter two names are guys that have been in a championship round and won.
Yeah.
So they have some of that. We've been there before. We're not going to be surprised by anything dynamic about them. They also come with depths of versatility and varying levels on the defensive end, and that is akin to everything that the Suns are looking to establish from their front court defensively. And that's going to be something that they're going to need more of outside of Mark Williams, especially if Oso can't play for certain reasons because of some of his shortcomings on the offensive side of the floor. Things will kind of grow with them, but if you have one of those fail-safe type of veteran guys to help bring him along but also play in place of him at times, I think they can help him a lot.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the big man depth on this team, or lack thereof, depending on how you want to talk about it. And those are names that stood out to me as well. I mean, Boucher was on a championship team, didn't really contribute that much, but also some background, him and Dylan Brooks playing together at Oregon, which could help. You never know. He's kind of fallen out of favor in Boston. We talk about where this Suns team is right now, a few games over 500 in the middle of December. And the trade deadline is not until February 5th, and there's another important date that we'll get to when we talk through this. But when you assess where this team is right now, how aggressive do you think they should be or need to be when we talk about this trade situation and a couple names becoming available?
Yeah, I don't know if they need another guard unless they're bringing in a guard that is a laser. It's going to be able to just let it fly from deep and give them more versatility in terms of shooting outside of Grayson Allen. I feel like that's something that might get in their way at times. We've seen it get in their way a little bit before this season already, but they get so many deflections and force so many turnovers, they can make up for it in other ways, offensive rebounding as well. So my eyes more so towards that backup center position, whether it's someone that gives a change of pace to Oso or if someone does the things that Oso does, but better. If you can find somebody that helps to bridge that gap, that'll help you a ton. And then obviously on the wing as well. Find another wing that can shoot the ball. They can give you some versatility on defense. Hopefully give you more size more than anything. I think that's probably what you want most. But what about you? What are you kind of looking for from them there?
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the perimeter, right? Because I think stylistically, I know we talked about it at one point, how deep this guard room is. And they have some guys. And obviously Colin Gillespie's been a revelation and waiting to get Devin Booker and Jalen Green back. Short to say that they're set in that area. Obviously, you always welcome an upgrade, and there are going to be some tough decisions with Jamar Bouye, Jordan Goodwin, another one who's some tough decisions looming with him as well. I think that it would be a high bar to upgrade there just because the way this team plays, the style you talked about defensively, deflections, thinking about how fast they played in games like that win over the LA Lakers where you really saw the identity and what they're trying to do. Obviously, there are ways you can improve that. They're not perfect, but in a perfect world, you get healthy and you have these guys backing up Jalen Green and Devin Booker. You feel way more comfortable. Grayson Allen's another guy you need to mention as far as that guard depth goes. It's just funny because every conversation seems to come back to the front court. But on the flip side, right, like trades, the way they work, you got to give something up to get something back. And there are different types of caution tape that the Suns and their front office are working around this year. And we've talked about it at length at various times on the show. But I guess the other part of the question is, who and what are you willing to part ways with in order to answer that question on the perimeter or on the interior?
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to see and continue to learn a lot about this team with the way the schedule is set up for them going through the turn of the calendar into the new year. They will have had a nice month and a half stretch of games where it's pretty much been no lows in terms of their opponents they're going up against. So obviously some injuries involved with that from their side, but I think the grand scheme of things, you can kind of assess, okay, this is where we're going to need room for improvement, whether it comes internally or if we bring talent in. This is where we can kind of lean into potentially parting ways with pieces to bring said talent in to create more balance. You don't want to be too deep at one position and not deep at another. You would rather be even killed across the board if you can help it.
Yeah.
So I feel like they have a lot in the guard room that they can part with maybe one piece or so to get them where they want to be. But I think naturally, because they have so many wings, that might be the position where if you part with one or two guys there, you can still have the main part of your rotation while still getting to see what your true guard group looks like without breaking that up too soon.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about the name that comes up as far as parting ways with anybody. Royce O'Neal seems to continuously come up. And I think the reason is because he's played well this year. And I think that the way I look at it when I think about trade negotiations, there are teams out there that are saying, hey, we are a Royce O'Neal from moving up a tier in our respective conference or our respective group in the conference. So he has value in that sense. And I could see parting ways with him, just given where he is in developmental timeline as well and where the Suns are as a team overall with their youth and trying to be an up-and-coming team in the Western Conference. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, we're talking about trade targets and we haven't mentioned Jonathan Kuminga. Well, he's in a different group of people who become eligible in the middle of January 15th. There's some financial things that are tied with the group of people, and it's a smaller group, but it'll be further down the line. And obviously Royce O'Neal is somebody who I could see playing with the Golden State Warriors down the line. But when you think about that conversation, which there's been some mixed reporting and mixed, I guess, talking about whether or not that's a realistic opportunity for the Suns to make that push for Jonathan Kuminga. And in the grand scheme, in the bigger conversation, that's about 3 weeks by the trade deadline. So one, do you think it's worth it to make that move for Jonathan Kuminga? And I guess the second half of that is, where does this team need to be 3 weeks out of the trade deadline? Because at that point, you probably know who you are and what you're playing for at this point in the season. So what do you want to see from them over this next month to maybe make that deal or not?
Yeah, I think start with the Kuminga part for me. It gets a little dicey just because the situation, the lens you were looking at him through prior to the season is not the same in terms of, first of all, what his trade stock is.
Yeah.
He's fallen out of rotation the last week or so for varying reasons. Not our business because we cover the Suns, so I won't delve into that too much. But the talent is not a question in any capacity.
Undeniable.
And I think we both would agree that he feels like a player that would benefit from a fresh start, a situation that allows him to have the ball in his hands, maybe a second or two more than the Warriors wanted him to get off it and move
23 years old, by the way.
23 years old with all the offensive potential in the world and a ton of defensive potential with that too. So I feel like he's a piece that's just begging for another opportunity and he might burst onto the scene. But the other part of looking at him through a different lens is contractually. So the Suns have things that they have to navigate because of the looming Bradley Beal contract that's on the books for them for I forgot how many seasons now, but they got it at a prorated discount off of the buyout. It's still lingering around, so that's hampering them on the cap in terms of the books. They have some players like Colin Gillespie that they have to figure out what number they'll be able to retain his talents from. He is an unrestricted free agent, I believe. Or is he restricted? I can't remember which one. Either way, you're going to have to pay him this upcoming summer. Mark Williams is another player that you're going to have to make a decision on. Obviously, you want to keep him healthy through the finish line, but that's a person that you're going to have to make a decision on contractually. Jonathan Kuminga is not on the same contract that he was on when you were looking at trading for him over the summer. And I think that's probably where you wanted to get with it.
Yeah, it's interesting now because thinking about like the team control and also a guy who we talk about the talent's undeniable, and he's in an interesting spot given the production or lack thereof and falling out of favor and needing a new scene for him. And maybe this isn't necessarily a place given. Kind of goes into what we were talking about with the trade deadline. If this team is still hanging around where they are, maybe contending for a top 6 spot, do you really risk what you've built to put yourself kind of out there and not necessarily know how these negotiations are going to go? It is very dependent on that, especially if you're betting on him becoming who you think he can be. So it's a very interesting thing to talk about. Obviously, we'll probably learn much more about that as the Suns approach the trade deadline, as they continue to try to stay in that middle of the pack in the Western Conference, to continue to contend and compete every night. And as they continue to do that, keep it locked in with us here, PHNX Suns. If you're not subscribed to us already, make sure you do that. Follow the show at PHNX Suns. Follow Steven at Steven with PH, PG3. And if you want to, follow me, Gil McGregor, with an underscore. Thanks for tuning in.